Here. All right, it is 7:02 p.m. I'd like to call this regular meeting of the Board of Selectmen to order for Monday, March 9th, 2026. Thank you, everyone, for coming today. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, next up is the First Selectmen's report. A couple things to talk about tonight. One of them is I'd like to address Harbor Road. So Harbor Road, for those of you who are watching, Harbor Road is a horseshoe road that starts on Nearwater, goes in residences and comes out at the bottom of Rings End Road, towards the Rings End Bridge. And so just by way of background, what's happening is that a number of folks who are visiting Great Island are parking along Harbor Road so they can walk from there and walk onto Great Island as a place to park. This has come up because we're in a difficult position with regard to parking access for Great Island at the moment. So where historically we've been parking while we work through our strategy is that folks could park at Pear Tree Point Beach, and that was a good access. You could walk to Great Island from Pear Tree Point Beach, but as everyone knows, Pear Tree Point Beach is closed while some construction work is being done, and there is no access to that parking. And we won't have access until probably around Memorial Days when that's scheduled to be finished. So in the meantime, we don't have good parking options for Great Island. So what's happening is folks are parking down on that road, and that's creating concern among residents who historically didn't have a lot of people parking there, as well as worries about traffic and safety and all of that. So what's happened is residents have been putting out signs in the yards saying that this is not Great Island parking and people should not be parking there. And they've also put out flyers that have a QR code that you can scan and send an email to the Board of Selectmen, Parks and Rec, saying that we need to come up with a better strategy for parking. First of all, I appreciate the concerns of those individuals. It's certainly disconcerting anytime you get more traffic or more parking on a road where you live. And historically, there just hasn't been that much. It's really worrying, and I understand that. So the way this works is that Harbor Road, like many other roads in town, is a public road. And so as a public road with no restrictions on that public road, anyone is within their right to park on that road. It's actually owned by the town. It's not owned by residents, and because it's a public road, you do have the right to park there. There are some safety concerns, so if you are parking, you got to park in the direction of traffic. And if people park on both sides of those roads, if the police come by at any time and there's an obstruction, say for emergency vehicles, then cars could be ticketed or towed. But as a general matter, you're not restricted from parking on that road because it's a public road. We do have examples in town where restrictions have been put on parking at the request of residents. The way that's worked is they put in an application to the local traffic authority, which is our police commission. And just by way of record, the way this works is that these kinds of matters with regard to traffic, speed limits, all of that in our town is actually governed by the police commission, which is our local traffic authority. So the way those residents did this is they applied to local traffic authority for a parking restriction on their street. Examples of that are over on Holly Lane and Libby Lane, which are two roads that are up by Darien High School. So the issue there was that Darien High School students were parking on that road, and the residents came together and said, we really don't like this and we'd like to put parking restrictions in place. They applied to the local traffic authority, and that was granted. First on Holly Lane, then when kids were parking down on Libby Lane, they put that same restriction there. The way those restrictions work right now is they apply to everybody. So in one case, a resident did park their car out in front of their street, on the street in front of their house, and they were ticketed because they had parked during the time that you're not supposed to park on that road. So it doesn't apply to non-residents. It's possible we could set something like that up in the future, but that's the way it works today. So the other thing I would stress about our situation there is that it is a temporary situation. As I said, we do expect to have parking restored on Pear Tree Point Beach, call it in 2.5 months at the latest, by the end of May. And so right now, as I said, we just don't have good options. And so when the flyer comes out and says the town really should have better parking options, it's not like we have not looked at this closely. We have, And there's just not a good solution to put in place that solves the problem of parking and traffic of folks trying to go down to Great Island. So what I'd say is two things. One is for right now, as the regulations stand today, anyone who's coming down to park on Harbor Road needs to be careful about that, like they would on any street in Darien. To the extent the residents want to pursue a restriction on parking on Harbor Road, they're well within their right to do that. The application should be submitted to the members of the Darien Police Commission, that's our local traffic authority, and they'll prescribe a process for applying for that. But as it stands right now, coming up with a solution and directing others to park elsewhere in town is not something we have access to. There's not any other source of public parking that's nearby, and there's not really private parking that we have a right to or access to that would solve that problem at that time. So we're well aware of this. We would encourage anybody who is worried about the traffic down there to continue to speak out about it, and we'd also encourage anyone who parks down there to treat those streets like they would treat streets in their neighborhood. It's something that really can only work if people approach this with a degree of safety mindedness. So I'm sure someone will have public comments on that, but I just want to lay out kind of where we are in terms of the situation with Harbor Road and what's next in terms of either what residents on that street can do or on what the town is planning to do in terms of our town strategy. The only thing I would say is that if you were to petition the local traffic authority with parking restrictions on Harbor Road, you'd also have to decide how far you want those restrictions to go into Harbor Road. That road goes all the way up, further up Rings End Road. If you start putting parking signs that says no parking here, but you stop at some point, then people can park in front of those houses. So coming to an agreement among neighbors as to just how far you want no parking signs to go won't be easy, because the minute you stop, then that neighbor is actually going to bear the brunt of any public parking on that road. So not an easy problem to solve. I'm hopeful that with some care and attention that we can handle this matter safely. And again, by the end of May, hopefully things will get back to normal and people will be able to park down at Pear Tree Point as they've done in prior years. Last thing I'll say in terms of schedule for our construction of parking on Great Island, that process is starting in terms of a design project and will start very soon. And based on their forecasts, it's into the fall of 2027. So a long time to wait for parking, but it's as fast as we can responsibly put it into place. Okay, in terms of other things to mention, we had a farewell lunch for our tax assessor, Tony Homeke, who retired, and had a party for him on Wednesday the 25th, so last week. And I just want to say he was a tremendous department head and somebody everybody respected. And it's sad to see somebody like that go, but it's just a reminder of the quality of people that we have working in Town Hall. And it was a privilege to work with him, and I wish him well in his retirement. I think I speak for everybody when I say what a terrific guy Tony Homeke is, and what a great retirement we hope he has. I am part of a property tax working group that the comptroller of the state of Connecticut has called together, and it's quite interesting. It's looking at challenges that we have with the property tax across the state of Connecticut as a source of revenue, and I will be publishing some work that I've got going on in this group right now for reaction at some point, but it's been an interesting ride to think about some of these problems that we have in other parts of the state. One of them that's quite interesting is the shift in mix from commercial to residential property values. So what's happened in some towns, particularly post-COVID, is that residential property values exploded, became much more expensive. Commercial property, not so much. So what happens is that the share of property taxes being paid by residential homeowners grew much faster than the value of their homes. And so you might see a 5% increase in town spending and a 10% increase in taxes simply because commercial properties were paying less. And so sorting through ways to try to smooth that effect is one of the focuses of the working group that we're tackling. So it's been interesting, and I'll do what I can to keep people informed as that thinking rolls along. But it's been a fascinating to talk to leaders of other towns and see how they think about these things. I will end my comments there, and we will move on to board liaison reports. Mr. Burke.
I reported on blight review at our last meeting. We will not be meeting in March, as I reported last time. We're going to an every other month format due to the happily the reduced work. So I will report to you in April.
Terrific, thank you very much. Monica?
Well, piggybacking on what you said about great people that work for town, I have some super great news. So you probably have all seen the clock at the top of the stables on Great Island, and you've said to yourself, wow, it is always noon or midnight. Well, thanks to our facility supervisor, Tony Campanella, he, on his own time, with a few other people, has got the clock working. So, it's an E. Howard clock, it's very famous. It was built in, I think he said 1905, and it runs for, I think, 8 days at a time. But you don't have to remember all this, because not only did he fix the clock, but he did a great video, which Linda just uploaded to the town website. So it'll be in the newsletter this week, but when you see Tony, Mr. Great Island, AKA, just give him a shout out, because that's just like a really great thing, and he took that on himself and solved a problem.
So it wasn't a Back to the Future lightning strike that took the clock out and,
Now it's, the video is,
Dr. Brown's going to show up and,
No, there's a lot of information, I mean, I didn't know. He went down the rabbit hole, let's just say that. So,
Yeah.
and we have enough other Great Island on, so I just wanted to give you that nice
Okay.
piece of news.
Sarah?
Update from the Henley Homes and Royal Building Committee. We have our next meeting next Wednesday, the 18th, at 6 p.m. on Zoom. We have had a request from the Board of Finance to consider releasing some of the contingency funds to cover some additional projects from the Board of Education capital budget. And right now we're looking into the potential costs of these items, and before we go to the committee and determine whether or not we'll be moving forward. So right now we're just waiting to get some estimates, solid estimates back.
When do you think you'll make that decision?
Well, we will make the decision as a committee. We're hoping to have that information by next Wednesday when we have our next meeting. So I think that was the goal, to have that date in mind.
Okay. We've got Marcy Minnick on video. Hello, Marcy. Thanks for joining. I know you're away. Anything updates from you?
So, can you hear me fine?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So, Hair Tree Point Building Committee, they completed their dredging in their timely fashion when we had the permits to be able to do that. So dredging is completed. It should be in the process of being cleaned up. And they're working on a lot of the design work throughout the parking lot, the beach area, the new sidewalk, some of the new vegetation that they're putting in. The good news is they are looking to have the project completed the last week of April. So hopefully that parking lot will be done by the first weekend of May, pending any weather issues. I mean, it has been kind of a crazy winter for weather, so the cleanup of a lot of the snow has definitely set back what we would hope would have been a little bit speedier. But they are still thinking that maybe the first week of May we can have the paving completed. And if that's the case, then the issue with the parking in Great Island will resolve a little bit earlier than expected. So keep fingers crossed that happens, that weather is permissible, and in April they can lay down that asphalt and get that parking lot up and going.
Okay, if we could just freeze the weather as like what it was today, that'd be great. Okay.
Yeah.
Anything else?
That's it.
Okay, terrific. All right. That's it for board liaison reports. Public comments.
I think we have the sign-in sheet.
Chris Jimenez, Sergeant. And just as a reminder, our public comment period is for 3 minutes, so please, if you could stick to that, that'll help
I
us.
think I'm going to speak on
Everybody's
behalf of a couple other people signed in, so
Okay,
I think
sure.
I'll take their time as well, if you don't mind.
Okay, go.
Appreciate it. Good evening, Mr. First Selectman and members of the board. I'm here tonight to request a small change to the police pension plan. Specifically, I'm asking for a minor wording change that would allow a retired Darien police officer to be rehired by the town in a full-time civilian position without having any negative impact on the police pension they already earned. If rehired, they would simply participate in whatever retirement system applies to that civilian role, just like any other employee. This change allows retired officers to continue serving the community in important public safety roles. It helps create a safer environment in our schools and throughout the town, and it provides the town with operational flexibility and experienced personnel, all directly benefiting the residents of Darien. At its core, this proposal is about service to the community and the quality of that service. After 20-plus years of service, Darien police officers bring specialized certifications, operational experience, and deep institutional knowledge about our geography, our schools, our emergency protocols, and our residents. The town has already invested significantly in that training and experience over the course of a career. That knowledge does not disappear upon retirement. This amendment allows the town to retain that expertise in civilian roles such as school security officer, emergency communications, and other public safety adjacent positions where experience and judgment matter immediately. A retired Darien officer can step into these roles on day one and provide a high level of service without a prolonged learning curve or additional training costs. That means stronger school security. That means more experienced personnel handling emergency calls. That means better decision-making in critical moments. The people of Darien deserve the highest quality service possible. This proposal helps ensure that standard is maintained. Throughout this process, a number of technical hurdles were presented by the town as reasons this could not be done, including concerns related to IRS compliance. However, after meeting with the town on March 4th, it was reported by the town administrator and the first selectman that those technical hurdles are no longer an issue. We were told this change can be done and that the hurdles are not as bad as we feared, to quote the first selectman directly. We are no longer debating whether this is legally or technically possible. We are debating whether we want to make this minor change to improve the safety to Darien. The town has offered an alternative that would allow retirees to return, but only up to 20 hours per week. Respectfully, that limitation does not address the operational need. The positions we are discussing, school security officer, dispatcher, and similar public safety roles, are full-time positions. A 20-hour cap would prevent retired officers from meaningfully filling the very jobs this amendment is intended to support. We continue to face hard-to-fill positions, particularly in our communications center. Since the dispatcher program began in 2014, approximately 24 dispatchers have been hired, and today we employ only 6 who have completed their training period. Even after all these hires, we have still not been able to fully staff our dispatcher positions. In fact, we expect another dispatcher to leave within the next month to take a job elsewhere. That level of turnover directly impacts service quality and consistency. This amendment is not simply about filling vacancies, it is about filling them with stability, experience, and professionalism. There's also been an argument that this creates a financial incentive for earlier police retirement. Respectfully, that assumption is speculative and unsupported by empirical data. Officers do not make retirement decisions lightly. Retiring early means walking away from a sworn salary, overtime opportunities, and continued career advancement. Any new job would not be guaranteed and would be subject to the town's hiring discretion. There is no empirical evidence that the mere possibility of a civilian position would drive earlier retirements. Concerns have also been raised about public perception. Again, this concern is speculative. This proposal is supported by the Police Commission and the Chief of Police, individuals who are themselves residents of Darien and deeply invested in this community. The public feedback I have personally received has been overwhelmingly supportive. The consistent response has been, why wouldn't the town want to do this, given that it provides better quality service to the people of Darien at no additional cost? Based on the town administrator's own chart, at least 53 cities and towns across Connecticut already recognize the value that retired police officers provide by allowing them to be rehired in public safety roles after retirement. Darien should recognize that value as well. This is not a radical idea, it is standard practice elsewhere in the state. Building on that statewide example, what I am presenting here is grounded in real-world experience in Darien. Both the town and the DPA have acknowledged that there are currently 2 retired Darien police officers working full-time for the town. One of them, Mark Capelli, serves as a school security officer. As a supervisor within the police department, I can say from direct experience that when officers respond to a school where Mark is assigned, we immediately receive valuable, reliable, and tailored information that enhances our response. He understands our policies, our procedures, and our protocols. He knows how we operate, That familiarity makes our response more effective and more efficient. That is not theoretical, that is operational reality. It translates directly into safer schools and more effective emergency response for our residents. In the town's memo from March 3rd, the town administrator referenced pension principles and the fundamental purpose of a pension plan. They claim the purpose of a pension is not meant to supplement full-time wages. Respectfully, that opinion is out of touch with reality. The practical reality is that a pension is designed to provide income to retired officers. And as we all know, costs of living are high. A retiree's pension in 2026 could be approximately $60,000 per year. In Fairfield County, that level of income alone makes it difficult to sustain a household. Most retirees cannot rely solely on their pension, and many seek employment in retirement simply to supplement that income and maintain financial stability. This amendment allows the town to preserve institutional knowledge, strengthen civilian public safety roles, improves safety in our schools, address chronic turnover in communication, provides experienced professionals in positions that directly affects residents. It is an operational improvement. The technical hurdles have been acknowledged as manageable. The operational need is real. The support from the chief and the police commission is clear. And the benefit to the community comes at no additional cost. In fact, it will save the town money. This board has the opportunity to provide better service to the residents of Darien, and that is what they deserve. Approving this change is simply the right decision for public safety and for the future of the town. I respectfully ask you to approve this targeted amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Mike Kostomsky,
I will
you read that? Okay.
stay inside.
Okay. Sandy Savage.
Good evening. I'm speaking to you, Sandy Savage. I live at 22 Pleasant Street in Darien. I'm also the head of the paraprofessional union, and I would like to say that I agree with everything. The police are great. I'd love them to come back. Also, the paraprofessionals equally. It is hard for them to keep going after they've retired. Sometimes they do need a little extra income. It's also hard for the district to find people to come in that know what the job is. And these people that have retired, that have worked for 20 plus years, know what to do when they get there. So it's a no-brainer to do this. I wish you would do it, and I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Joe Licari, he left, didn't he?
No,
Oh, there you
Chris
go.
spoke on my behalf.
You're good? Okay. Michael Cummings?
Chris spoke on my behalf.
Okay. Margaret Hadley. On Harbor Road, Margaret Hadley? No? Gone?
That was the woman with the young child.
Okay, she left, okay. All right, and TJ Moon? Same, all right, so we're all set. Any public comments online?
We did receive one email about parking on Harbor Road.
Okay, and that's
That went
been
to all
set.
of you.
Great, okay, thank you. All right, that's public comments. New business, discuss and take action to provide guidance on proposed revisions to pension reemployment language. Jennifer?
So you heard from Sergeant Jimenez about the DPA proposal, and I just want to set the stage a little bit. The Board of Selectmen is the policymaking body for the town's retirement system. That includes both the town pension plan, which covers town and Board of Ed employees, as well as the police pension fund. You're being asked to consider an update to our pension reemployment language, and it is important to note that our rules and our pension only govern reemployment by the town and the BOE. Our retirees remain free to work elsewhere without restriction. I just want to make that clarification. So we're only talking about rehiring within the town. So you've read my report, you received the DPA proposal, and you've heard from the DPA and public comment, and we agree on a lot of this. We agree on the value of having our retirees come back, as well as the need to revise the reemployment language. Where we do differ is on the allowance of full-time reemployment without the suspension of pension benefits. As you consider the proposals, I ask that you keep in mind that pension provisions should be stable and enduring, and serving the core purpose of providing income after separation from service, not supplementing full-time wages for active employees. Because a pension is a fundamental benefit provided by the town to ensure a secure retirement, any modifications must be driven by a compelling reason such as addressing structural inequities or meeting an urgent operational need that can't be resolved through other means. Additionally, we always need to keep in mind that any such changes must minimize unintended secondary costs. In my professional judgment, allowing full-time reemployment without suspension of benefits is inconsistent with the spirit of the current part-time allowance and does not address a compelling town need. I recommend transitioning from our current wage-based limit to a more equitable hours-based calculation of part-time, while continuing to require suspension of benefits if reemployed on more than a part-time basis. This approach honors the original intent of the reemployment provision, aligns with common municipal practices in Connecticut, and improves ease of administration without necessitating a permanent expansion of pension benefits. I do want to go through a few highlights of the agenda item report. It did include some summary of the DPA proposal. I'll skip that because you got an update from Sergeant Jimenez. But background on the pension, Chapter 50 of the Town Code establishes the retirement system, which is divided into the employee retirement plan and the police pension fund. Both of those are defined benefit plans. Most of our current employees participate in these pension plans. The exceptions are listed in the agenda item report. Certified teachers participate in the state teacher retirement plan, and certain employees hired after certain dates for their employment group participate in 401s. And the two pension plans have different vesting requirements, different benefit accrual calculations, different pension benefit calculations, and all of that is described in the agenda item report, so I won't go into detail. The actual reemployment provision is in section 50-98 of the town code, and that governs the reemployment in both plans. The current language allows a retiree to receive pension payments while reemployed, provided their annual earnings do not exceed 1/3 of their prior annual compensation. If they exceed the 1/3, their pension payments are suspended and they restart participation in either a defined benefit or begin accruing a defined contribution 401 benefit, depending on which job they've returned to. And then upon subsequent retirement, their pension payments resume. If they went into a DB position, it would be recalculated with the additional years of service and new compensation. If they went into a 401 position, their original payments would resume, and then they'd have access to their 401 funds. And the town does rehire retirees in part-time roles. We currently have 13, most of which are traffic agents. We do need to factor in some other considerations for rehires. Outside of the reemployment language, working more than 20 hours per week triggers other costs and considerations. Generally, at more than 20 hours per week, employees must participate in either our pension plan or our 401, depending on the position they're in. And they're also conferred collective bargaining rights under the Connecticut Municipal Employee Relations Act. At 30+ hours per week on average, we have to offer benefits per the Affordable Care Act. So positions that are currently structured as part-time, such as traffic agents, must remain so regardless of any changes to the pension reemployment language. The two proposals before you tonight from the town, we're looking to redefine how part-time is calculated and to ensure equity and ease of administration. And the DPA, as you heard, is looking to allow continued pension payments to full-time police retirees rehired into non-sworn roles. Their change would keep, if a sworn officer is rehired into a sworn role, it would keep that 1/3 limitation. So for the town's proposal, it's been our experience that the 1/3 earning limit is inequitable and it's difficult to administer. I did look at a potential retirement for someone who was a police retiree at the top patrol step, and I assume they were working as a traffic agent, which is $55 an hour. For someone who retired in 2016 at the top step, they can only work 521 hours per year, or an average of about 10 hours per week before they breach that 1/3 limit. For someone who were to retire in 2026 at the top step, they can work 673 hours before breaching that 1/3 limit, which is only an average of 13 hours per week. So in both cases, the 20 hours per week would allow these employees to work more without suspending their benefits, and it would allow both of them to work the same amount before suspending benefits. So the language that we have right now, it's inequitable. People can't work the same amount of hours without having to suspend their pension. It's a challenge to administer because the earnings have to be tracked by individual and the limit could be different for every individual. And that 1/3 restriction limits the assignments that someone like a traffic agent can take. That requires the town to either hire more traffic agents or struggle to fill requests for traffic agents. So what we're looking to do is adopt an hours-based approach that allows retirees to work an average of up to 20 hours per week annually without suspension of benefits. This would provide flexibility to both the town and the retiree, because you could work full-time for up to about 5 months, provided you don't work the rest of the year. And that can accommodate seasonality in either the town's needs or the retiree's schedule. And it maintains the part-time nature of post-retirement work and avoids triggering the other costs and considerations of 20+ and 30+ hours per week. Just in response to the DPA proposal, they cited that Stanford allows the rehiring of rehiring at full-time without suspension of benefits, and that is true. The agenda report includes a summary of 74, we looked at reemployment practices of 74 municipalities. And of the 74, 3 don't allow any reemployment. 67 allow part-time without suspension of benefits, and 4, including Stanford, allow full-time reemployment without suspension of benefits. The bulk of those are in the CMERS, Connecticut Municipal Employees Retirement System, which is a multi-employer retirement system. And it does, that was the 50+ that Sergeant Jimenez was referring to. It does allow a carve-out if they come back for fire or police who come back in a school safety role. They don't have to suspend their benefits if they come back at more than 20 hours per week. They did a carve-out for school security, or school safety. In response to the issue of police officers filling vacancies, it is true that we previously did experience challenges filling telecommunicator vacancies. But the agenda item report contains information about our most recent recruitments for telecommunicators, school security officers, and police officers. As of last week, we have no telecommunicator vacancies. Their last hires we talked about during the budget process. They did make their last hire, and that person is starting on March 16th. There is 1 part-time SSO vacancy that they would love to fill. And then as of last week, the police department was in the process of interviewing to fill their 3 police officer vacancies. In regards to telecommunicators, we think that the recent successful recruitment was a result of 2 things. We now have a standalone union contract with Dispatch. We didn't have that for a while. They were part of the town hall union. And while we were working through creating their own standalone, they broke off and became their own bargaining unit. While we were working through their contract negotiations, the department didn't want to do any hiring. We wanted to get all the union negotiations set, have that contract in place, and then do a recruitment. In addition, the town and the department worked together to come up with some changes to the recruitment process, some testing as part of the recruitment process that is expected to identify better candidates and make sure that they make it through the training period. So we think that those changes have contributed to the success of the recruitment process. So just to summarize, we're in agreement on a lot of the points of reemployment, but where we differ is that full-time without suspension of benefits. The town recognizes the value of rehiring retirees, but we have to balance that against the fundamental purpose of a retirement plan. And the town's proposal to move to an hours-based definition of part-time offers flexibility while maintaining consistency with the intent of the current language and common municipal practice in Connecticut. The DPA proposal is an expansion of benefits, and currently there's no evidence of an operational need that justifies such a significant departure from standard municipal practice. What I am requesting of the board is that you vote to provide official guidance as to the desired revision to the reemployment language. And it could be the town proposal, the DPA proposal, no change if you're comfortable with what we have, or you could ask some questions and come up with some other alternative. Once I have guidance from the board, I'll pursue the necessary changes to the code and any bargaining units that may be involved, and then bring plan language before the proper boards for the approval process.
Okay, thank you. Questions, Mike?
First, thank you for your report. It was very well written, very specific, very, very useful. So thank you for that. Can you tell me a little bit more specifically what the changes would be between calculating the part-time at 20 as opposed to 25? I know you mentioned the Affordable Care Act at 30 hours, but what, if anything, would change between
Moving
20
instead
and
of
25?
20, allowing 25.
Yeah.
One of the biggest changes is that under the Connecticut Municipal Employee Relations Act, they confer collective bargaining rights at 20 hours, an average of 20 hours per week. So I feel like I'm picking on traffic agents, but we use retirees a lot as traffic agents. So if we permit the traffic agents to work 25 hours per week on average, they now have collective bargaining rights. And we could end up with them either joining an existing union, forming their own union. So that is something we need to keep in mind. Additionally, our town pension plan does say that any town employee working a regularly scheduled 20 hours per week must participate in the pension plan. So if they have retired from a town pension plan and now they're going into another town pension plan, that's also something we need to keep in mind. That doesn't occur until 20 hours per week. So if we keep them below that, we avoid the mirror collective bargaining and the requirement that they go into the pension.
Okay. And I know you said that in your presentation, and thanks. Was there anything else?
No, it's really those two for 20 plus.
Thank you.
Because the benefits in terms of healthcare and what have you don't kick in until 30.
Right.
Okay. Other questions?
Yeah, I noticed that there were 2 towns that were at 19 and everybody else was at 20. That's why.
Yeah, I mean, for our part-timers, we usually say 19.75 per week on average.
Okay.
As long as you don't hit 20, you're okay.
Marcy or Sarah?
So obviously, I see the benefit of having retired officers work in Darien. It makes sense. There's no question. I think as someone who's representing the town, I think my concern is the second contribution from the town towards their pension on the second salary, not the original pension. I think it's, I think the phrase is called double dipping, but I think my concern is not only they're receiving their pension, then they're receiving, if they were to be receiving a full-time salary plus benefits, plus another either defined benefit or defined contribution. And that to me it's excessive. So I'm trying to understand why. It's unfortunate that, maybe there is a reason why their pension plan has that
The limit?
requirement that they have to be in it after 20 hours.
Yeah, I don't know the history on that.
So Jen, is the idea that we would then do this for other groups or is this just specific for the police?
That is a decision that you can make. Sitting in my seat, in my role, I do need to be mindful about equity across all of our employee groups. The police do bring a very specific set of, skills and knowledge to those roles that Sergeant Jimenez mentioned. But we also have retirees in other roles that bring a lot of expertise and knowledge and value to other town roles. My preference would be to not allow anything more than that 20 hours for any employee group, but that is something that you can consider. A lot of pension plans will do carve-outs, like Seamers did for just that school safety. They can do a blanket, anybody can do this, or only certain groups can do this. So I do feel that if we allow it for one, the paraprofessionals, they're a great group that's hard to fill and would be well served by being able to rehire retirees. So I do think that the town can benefit by having retirees come back. And we do allow that now. You just have to put your pension benefits on hold while you're back working full-time.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to make sure. You can be hired full-time.
You absolutely can. Yep.
Or you could work 5 months.
Yep.
As long as it's no more than
an average of up to 20 hours per week,
Per year, or 20 hours per week over the course of the year?
over the course of the year, yeah.
Okay. Marcy, comments, questions?
Yeah, question, why is this adaptation negotiation coming up in the middle of a cycle? Why is this not being discussed when the union contract is up for renewal?
The DPA did reach out directly to the Board of Selectmen and ask that this be placed on your agenda, I think back in November. There are elements of it that I think are absolutely things that should be negotiated. What I'm asking of you as a policy board is just guidance. Do you want us to pursue, do you want to keep it to 1/3? Do you want to move to the 20 hours limit? Or do you want to pursue full-time reemployment without suspension of benefits? And if you do, then for all employee groups, one employee group, just specific groups. And from there, once I have that guidance from you, we need to speak with our labor attorney and discuss negotiations, because this is a benefit and it should be negotiated. But we need that guidance from you first on how you want us to proceed.
Is it accurate that the superintendent is not looking for the SSOs and SROs to be now sworn officers?
I've heard that. I don't know that any formal decision's been made.
Got it.
Has there been any modeling as far as the cost of this?
No, it's difficult because as the DPA points out rightfully in their materials, if we have a vacancy and it comes with benefits, we're gonna be paying the salary and the benefits regardless of who's in there. Where the potential cost comes in, and I have a difference of opinion with DPA on this, if allowing rehire without suspension of your benefits, full-time rehire, does encourage some people to leave their current role early, you're going to increase the liability in your pension fund.
And that's what I was wondering.
It's
Yeah.
very difficult to calculate, and it's very difficult to say if that does or does not happen, because you really need to look over a long horizon and say, has your average years of service changed since you instituted this change? It's not really something, unless you're looking at that data that way, that you can say it will or it won't. There is the potential to increase the liability in the pension.
And then we have two people that are in this category now, and that was discontinued.
Yep.
Why? What conversation happened?
So this was under a prior town administrator. In 2023, I was looking back because I couldn't remember exactly when. In September of 2023, the HR director, myself as finance director, and the town administrator had a conversation with our pension attorney regarding the reemployment language. At that point, the two retirees were already in place, and they weren't earning another pension. They weren't getting a 401, which they continue to do. And in speaking with our pension attorney, he made it very clear that that was it was not compliant with the reemployment terms in the pension. The town administrator at that time did say, it was a town error. We did permit this, so we're not going to penalize the people who are in that. We will allow them to stay in and they're grandfathered, but we need to discontinue that approach going forward because it's not consistent with the reemployment language.
Jen, can you go over the difference? You talked a little bit about the 20 hours versus the 15 hours or 13 hour, that comparison?
So the 1/3 on the traffic agents. So the 1/3, it's 1/3 of the earnings you were making at the time that you retired, essentially. So if you have two employees who retired 10 years apart, which, and they're working, want to come back for the town, which is a very possible situation with the police because they start early, they have 20-year vesting, and they're eligible for retirement, 20 years in. So you could be looking at somebody in their early 40s, and they want to come back even, for years. So what I looked at as an example is the top patrol step, if they retired at that pay.
At 20 years.
Yep, 20, well, it doesn't even matter your years of service for this 1/3 limit. It's just whatever your compensation was at the time you left.
Okay.
So for the person who retired in 2016, the 1/3 of their pay limits them to only 520 hours per week as a traffic agent.
A
Per year.
A year, sorry,
Big
No,
520.
this job is 500 hours a week.
520 hours per year as a traffic agent, which is only on average 10 hours a week. For someone in 2026 who also retired at that same top patrol step, working $55 an hour as a traffic agent, they can work I forget exactly what it was, 620 something hours per week, or per year. 673 hours per year, which comes out to on average 13 hours per week. So the person who retired in 2016 is doing the same job, but they either have to stop working at 150 hours sooner than someone who retired in 2026 while they're doing the same job, and that's just based on how long they've been retired and what their pay was at the time that they retired. It has nothing to do with the job they're currently doing. So to me, that's very inequitable. Furthermore, for something like traffic agents, it is a high rate of pay, which is going to hit the 1/3 limit sooner than maybe a clerical type of part-time position. So they can't even work the up to 20 hours that we're looking to do, which would allow them to work more, benefit the department for the traffic agent role. I think moving to the 20 hours is definitely a big benefit to the traffic agents.
Yeah, it's like 50% more time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're very limited with this 1/3 language.
Sure.
How many officers today have 20 years of service?
I don't know offhand.
May I ask? Is that something I can ask?
Yeah.
Sorry, Jimenez, do you know the answer to that?
How many have 20?
How many officers have 20 years of service?
I'm not sure. I'd like to just speak to address some issues if that's
Hold on
okay.
just one second. Let's finish the board question.
Absolutely.
Mike, other questions, comments? Marcy? Anything else from you? Monica? Okay. Sure.
So I just want to clarify. Quite honestly, I think it's an uncomplicated matter that's being intentionally muddied a bit. What we're asking for is to have the opportunity to apply for another full-time job. We're not asking to be guaranteed that job. We think that most police officers can add value to these roles that we're asking for. Again, not guaranteeing the job to us. You will be hiring somebody to fill those roles. So you're not paying any additional cost. You're not paying an extra retirement benefit. The town is not out any money. It's actually saving money because of the training period. A dispatcher is in training at minimum 3 months. Every shift that they are not a full dispatcher, there is a vacancy. Every time they're being trained, you are paying the trainer 2 hours of overtime every shift. So by hiring a retired police officer who already knows the job, can immediately on day one take over. The 20 hours limit doesn't work, like I said in my original statement. We're looking to fill jobs that work more than 20 hours per week. Quite honestly, I don't see the downside to this. I would also like to, I have Michael Gostomski here, CPA, who works with many municipalities who can address the factual basis for some of the claims that the town administrator made. So may I have Mike come up and speak to the ERISA issues?
I didn't speak about it.
No? Okay.
Yeah, that's a technical, your point's well
Okay.
taken about those technical issues, and that's, we work through that once we come up with some guidance from this board as what to do. So, but it sounds like you're in agreement, except on this one point, which is if an officer is hired full-time, does that officer get to keep his pension payments in the full-time role or not? Is that essentially where we are? And that's it. That's the only difference, because we could still hire officers in a full-time role. They could still get benefits as full-time employees. They could still come in and be school security officers. They can do all of that. The only difference between what you're recommending, what the town administrator is recommending, is do we do that and allow that officer to get their full pension payment while they're employed? Is that correct?
Correct. And I don't
That's it.
think,
But that's it.
that is all. That is all. But by not making the change, you're not going to get the qualified individuals to even apply for these jobs
Because they need their pension payments on top
Because
of
they
it.
need the pension
Okay.
payments.
Okay.
I did look up, it's not exact, I think we have about 20 with 20-plus years, or, 20 more years of service.
20 or more years of service, we have 20 officers with 20 or more years.
Yep.
It's 14.
14?
Thank
Oh,
you.
okay.
I'd also like to address, so we talk about data, right? And that's speculative, that somebody's going to retire at 20 years of service. That's not the reality. If we just look, it's just one small example, but if we look at Stanford, their response, the HR director's response from them was that the employees max out their pension benefits and then retire. They're not incentivized to retire early just because if there's another job that they may take.
Okay. Couple questions for me. Has this request come up before in terms of the
To the
DPA?
board, no.
Okay.
But it's my understanding that it has come up to prior town administrators as well as prior first selectmen. And that's part of the reason why I thought it was very important that we have this conversation. This board is the policy-making board, and I don't think it should be approved or denied without this board weighing in and providing that guidance.
Okay. And on the Seamers carve-out that you described, does that Seamers carve-out apply to a Seamers town reemploying an officer from that town in that town's school role? Because the problem with that was that because of the Seamers restriction, no Seamers town could hire any officer and put them in a full-time role and pay a pension.
Right.
It was a blanket restriction. And so they relaxed that, but did they relax it so that those officers could be hired not just in other Seamers towns, but within the town that that officer was retiring from?
I did look at that. I don't see it in front of me, but I believe that they can be a police officer in town A and retire from, as a Seamers town and be a school security, school safety position in that same
In
town
town.
A.
Okay, all right. Is there,
I'm sorry, I just want to address one more thing in terms of making this change to all other unions. I just want to pose the question, what would be the downside to allowing other unions with the paraprofessionals? I don't see the downside in opening up the applicant pool to qualified individuals. Again, not guaranteeing a job, just getting qualified individuals to apply for this job. And then one last thing and I'll leave. It's a cost savings to the town if individuals do retire, maybe at 20, 21, 22 years, because you're getting a step 5 officer or a higher paid officer off the books to then onboard a step 1 or lower paying officer, as well as their pension is lower. You retire at 20 years, it's 50%. If you continue to 29 years, it's 76%. So, again, I think it's a win-win. I think it benefits the town financially and operationally.
okay, thank you.
Thank you.
If there are no other questions, does anyone on the board have a emerging view as to what you would support in terms of what the town administrators covered?
Jen, when you reached out to the 74 towns and 70 of them have this policy, why haven't more changed? I mean, the 20-hour is, looking at this sheet, it's what's been.
It's the norm.
It's the norm. So were you able to talk to other towns and?
Susan did all the outreach on that and summarize it, so I'll let her speak to that if she had any conversations about it.
Yeah.
You need to come up to the microphone if you don't mind.
So of those 74 towns in the summary, 24 of them actually responded to me directly to a question. I just sent out a survey, do you allow this, and why don't you? One of the 24 that responded, the director in Reading, is the one who said, we can't do it because we're part of Seamers. And then I went to Seamers' website. There's a whole list. There's a lot more than 50 plans in Seamers. I just pulled out 50 that are full municipalities. So I did not speak to them directly. And I think it was the people that aren't allowing it, it was for the same reasons that we are, that they believe that the pension plan is meant to aid their retirees in their retirement, to help them with their income, to supplement their income in retirement. And they just don't feel philosophically that a retirement is something that you receive benefits from while you're working full-time at the same time. And most of them do the same things that we do, where you can come back and you can work full-time if you suspend your benefit, work full-time get, in the 401 or whatever you wanted to, and then when you retire, when you actually separate from service, you can resume your pension benefits. And can I just make one other comment? That's not about your question, but with regard to school security and dispatchers, both of those roles offer part-time options. So it isn't like if you want to come back and be a dispatcher, you have to do it full-time. We do have part-time dispatch roles available.
Okay, that's good to know.
Yep.
Mike?
No more questions. I mean, I think the union makes some very compelling points. I've been thinking about this for, a few days, and not to pass the buck, but I feel, it may sound this way, when we have an administrator, a professional who's making a recommendation, I feel like to subvert that recommendation, I have to have a pretty compelling basis, and I don't see the compelling basis to go against Jennifer's recommendation at this point. We may well determine that there are structural issues later that we have to address differently, and this provision may be one of those, but for the moment, at this time, my guidance or suggestion would be to go with our administrator's recommendation.
Sarah, Monica?
Is the carve-out an option or no?
The carve out of what?
If we model what Stanford has done?
Stanford allows them to come back in any non-law enforcement role.
Right.
They also allow other classes of employees to come back as well.
Right. But I think what John was referring to, if the sworn officers came back in a school security,
That's a Seamers carve-out.
that's a Seamers
It's a
carve-out.
Seamers carve out. That's not here. I was just trying to get clarity on
Okay.
the nature of why they set that up. But the reason they did that was that the Seamers restriction applies to all Seamers towns. So if you're in one
And were you
Seamers,
Seamers town?
no.
No.
If you're a
Understood. Thank you.
Seamers Town A employee, police officer retires and wants to go work as a security person in Seamers Town B, they can't, because the restriction is globally for all Seamers towns.
Understood.
Yeah, so we are not a Seamers participant.
Well, Jen, I think you did a lot of work, and I think that the solution here is something in the middle, and that is the 20 hours. And being able to still work full-time, but not collect the pension seems like a good compromise.
Marcy?
I appreciate both presentations tonight, and I definitely can see both sides on this. However, I think it's a little preliminary to make any sort of adjustment at this point, considering that this has been talked about at the town level for quite a few years, and we are on an off cycle. I wouldn't mind revisiting this in negotiations in June, but as of right now, I have to go with the town administrator who's done the work, and I believe she had a compelling reason to go in this direction. Like Mike said, I don't know if there's other hiccups that we're going to find along the way, and I want to make sure that we find those, iron them out before we make any drastic changes.
Other questions or suggestions?
What do you think?
I would agree with that. I think the town administrator deserves some deference on this. She's in a professional role, and that's why she's in this role, is to sort through this and come to us with a policy recommendation. I think that sounds like Mike brings up a good point. It's entirely possible that the facts change on this and that there's a reason to change course at some point, in which case there's always going to be a board of selectmen and we can change our guidance going forward. There's also the point that Marcy makes, which is that this can be brought up in a negotiation or at some point in the future. But to do it kind of off cycle like this feels maybe not quite right, and that we should stick with the guidance that she's asking us to approve. Okay. Could I get a motion, please, to approve or to provide guidance with regard to proposed revisions to pension reemployment language consistent with what the town administrator has recommended to this board? Mike moves. Sarah seconds. All in favor? Okay, unanimous. Thank you. All right, next item, discuss and take action on a resolution amending the appropriation and bond authorization for the sanitary sewer system project to increase the amount by $7,500, excuse me. Edward. Good evening.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me tonight. What you have in front of you is a request for a special appropriation and bond authorization of 1.705500 or 1.7 million for the sewer commission and the DPW to continue our work rehabbing the sanitary sewer system in the town of Darien. This is a second amendment to the bond authorization that has come multiple times in front of the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance. Excuse me. So just so you get a better feel for where we are just in the middle of phase 3 of our construction rehab. We did a part 1 engineering study. It recommended 3 phases for construction, and we're just about ready to wrap up the 3rd phase. So we're in the middle of that right now. We did see some additional items that needed to be addressed during some CCTV work. So I asked for some additional funds to cover that work in this bond authorization, as well as starting the Part 2 engineering, which is the other half of Darien. We basically did almost 2/3. We're going to do the other 1/3 right now. We did start this back in 2019. We did come in for an authorization of $2.3 million initially, and then to complete the construction work, I asked for another 2.3. So at that time, we were up at $4.6 million. This second amendment or 3rd request is going to take us up to about $6.4 million worth of bonded funds to do engineering and construction rehab. This special appropriation bond authorization will only cover us up to the completion of Part 2 of the engineering. From that report, I will get recommendations for rehab, at which time I will assess where to obtain the fundings to complete that construction rehab. It could be that we have reserve that I could use, or bonding I would use to cover it all, or a mix of the two. But that's the goal is not to have to come back for a full bonding recommendation and resolution to take care of the final construction phases. But I won't know that probably for another 1.5 years, at which time we'll make the decision on how to go and how to approach that those construction rehabs. On top of the $6.4 million, there was $1.3 million in ARPA funds that we used also, and we got a Clean Water Fund grant of $350,000. This second part, we also will be applying for a Clean Water Fund grant. It covers 55% of the design costs. Our estimate for design is about $800,000, so we're looking to somewhere in the range of $440,000 worth of a grant to come back to the sewer fund. I'm going to stop right there and see if you have any questions, comments, concerns.
Well, thanks to help from your team, last week's newsletter covers a lot of sewer-related material and perspectives on not just that work, but our system kind of writ large. And I think it's interesting when you compare this type of investment to ripping out the sewers or starting over or changing all that versus this great engineering that's going in and solving a ton of problems without having to do all of that. It really is quite interesting work, and I think very important for taxpayers to know that this is while costly, the most efficient way to address these problems and get our sewers to where we need them to be in the long term. So I appreciate you doing all that. Does anyone have any questions for Ed
No,
on this
all right.
project? Okay.
Yeah, Ed, the $800,000 for the design fee, I totally appreciate getting some extra funding for that, but that seems, is that kind of high? Is this work?
Our original estimate the first time was like $730,000 for the first design phase, and it included a pump station evaluation and some what they call CMOM work, which is guidelines on how to take care of your sewer, basically a booklet. So we did that work originally. As part of the second phase, as you folks are aware, we did have a breakdown at Nearwater Force Main. We are going to do a tabletop review of that whole force main all the way across the harbor to Stanford and evaluate our responsibilities there. So I had that put in also, as well as there is pump station flood hardening priorities I'm having them do also. So that 800 is not just the I&I study and the sanitary sewer evaluation part, but it's also I threw in pump station stuff and our force main evaluation. I thought they were important too.
Okay, because that was like, that feels like 20-some%, which seems 24%, which seems high, but now you explained it. It covers a lot, so perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Other questions? Marcy, anything from you? Mike? No? Okay. Could I please get a motion to approve the resolution amending the appropriation and bond authorization for the sanitary sewer system project and to increase the amount by $1,705,500? Monica moves. Mike seconds. All in favor? Marcy, you're good? Okay. Unanimous. Thank you, Edward.
Thank you very much.
Okay, next item, discuss and take action on increasing the size of the advisory committee on sustainability from 5 to 7 members. You'll recall that we constrained that to 5 because they didn't have enough members, and by doing that, it reduces their pressure that they're under to get a quorum. But Mohan Hanamanta, who is the chairman of the committee, called me up, says they have 2 great individuals that have been interviewed by the town committees, and he would love to put them on that board, but can't do it because of the size, and so asked if we could change that from 5 to 7. I'm completely fine with that, and we'll work with them to get those folks up for us to be interviewed forthwith. Any questions or discussion? Could I please get a motion to increase the size of the advisory committee on sustainability from 5 to 7 members? Mike moves. Sarah seconds. All in favor? Great. All right. Next up is Great Island. The item to discuss is discuss and take action on a resolution amending the appropriation and bond authorization for the purchase of Great Island to decrease by the amount of $2,304,999. Jennifer.
It's a little unusual that work is still ongoing and we're looking to reduce the authorization and bond appropriations, but this was an unusual initial appropriation. The authorization that we're talking about is the initial purchase of Great Island. We've already amended it once. I think we reduced it by about $11 million after we had closed, and we had assumed about $6.5 million of post-closing expenses. So for the last couple of years, we've been working through that $6.5 million of post-closing expenses. There's attached to the agenda item report a detailed list of all the work that Ed and his crews have been doing out on Great Island. The reason we're seeking to reduce that now is we know that some of this work is not moving forward. Some of the work that was planned is not moving forward. Some of the big ticket items, like particularly remediation, we found an alternative method that was less expensive than what we had initially thought. So we know that we don't need the full appropriation that's out there, but I am looking to keep a little bit of a contingency. So I sat down with Ed, was a little busy last week with a deposition, but I did sit down with him today and go over where we stand, and I have a little bit of an update for you. I'm still looking to reduce the same amount, the same $2,304,999, but it's distributed a little bit differently. So the first page of what you have, which is also summarized in the report, is all of the categories of that original.
I'm sorry, were you able to email that to Marcy so she can see it?
Oh, sorry, Marcy. I'll email it to you after so you have it for a reference. It's minor changes and we're still looking to reduce the same amount, but what this has is all of the categories of that original appropriation. So the original acquisition, and then everything after that is a 6.5-ish million. So site preparation, repairs and installation, parking and access improvements, engineering consulting fees, legal and professional fees, and contingency. As I said, I sat down with Ed, we moved a couple of things around, had a conversation of a couple of things that I was misunderstanding, what he was expecting. And what this really comes down to now, and I'll go through the details, but I was carrying a contingency of about $103,000. With these changes right now, it's carrying a contingency of just over $60,000. So it's a little tighter, but I do think it's important that we have a contingency there because work is still ongoing. We may come across things, we can't bring it down to the penny because work is still ongoing, but we don't want to tighten it too much and then have to go all the way through the boards in order to take care of a minor issue that happens to come up as we're finishing the work. So in the original acquisition category, we actually had approved the post-close fund. The Board of Finance approved the $6.5 million of post-close funding prior to closing on Great Island. And final legal and closing costs were more than anticipated, which is why you see a deficit of $386,000 there. We had to use some of the $6.5 million post-closing, what was intended for post-closing, for the actual closing. Site preparation included all of the soil remediation expenses, and the significant surplus here is due to utilizing a different method. We had originally planned to cap areas of concern, but this was very costly, and the final remediation method was a capping of the orchard area and removal of hotspots on the remainder of the island. We do have a placeholder of $250,000. I had originally shown that as expended, but it's actually anticipated for additional remediation that may be needed. Some of that is dependent on what is planned with the early access and where that goes. If these areas are part of where early access is going to go, they can be remediated as part of that project. If they are away from what's going to be disturbed as part of early access, we should remediate them with these funds. Repairs and installation, that included some asbestos removal, transformer repair, and other repairs. The estimated remaining expenditures, I had an estimated remaining expenditure for asbestos removal of $29,500. And speaking with Ed, the work has actually already been done back in December of 2024, but we have held off paying the vendor because we have a damage claim that we are trying to work out with them. So they have not been responsive, and it's possible that some or all of that $29,500 actually will not be spent. Parking and access improvements, this is where we've spent the majority of post-closing funds, and this includes the widening of 23A and the acquisition of the traffic circle. So everything that you see remaining, Ed updated me because he had just paid some invoices, but the remaining $926,997, that's the updated number, that's all for 23A. Mostly construction, but also a small amount for retaining wall design and consultant fees. Engineering and consulting fees includes the soil study, soil remediation plan, and a remediation action plan. The soil management plan is actually something that will be used on an ongoing basis whenever we do work out there, based on what areas we're working in and what the recommended management is for that area. The estimated remaining expenditures, I was carrying $6,190 for the soil management plan, but that has already been paid. It was a duplicate as a placeholder as well as paid, so that's no longer expected. So the remainder is just for closeout on the remediation action plan. Legal and professional fees included legal fees, appraisals, surveys, and other professional fees associated with the negotiations for the traffic circle, review of easements, land use and zoning research, those types of items. And then finally, the contingency, like I said, is now, with all these updates, standing at $60,469.
There was some back and forth between the Board of Finance and Josh about these numbers and getting them all corrected, updated. Did all that get resolved to the Board of Finance's
Yes, I got a
satisfaction?
text from Josh right before this meeting that Jim has a question about $1 or $2 difference, so we'll just get that resolved. I think
I
it's
just want to make sure that
a math
whatever we're going to
question, but-
approve, that the math is what he's expecting and that that's all been
Yep,
sorted.
so the 2,304,000 is what we're comfortable reducing, and then on the bond authorization that you have, the math gets you to the right number.
Okay, so the bond authorization is correct?
Yep.
Okay, got it. Okay.
So that's that 2,366 number? Yeah, I think so, okay. So just so I understand, the 250 for soil remediation, so the idea is that if we do have to do remediation in the access project, we will use these funds?
If it's in the area that we're actually putting in the access project, it would be part of that project, part of the access funds. I think Ed said some of this was near the root cellar, and so we held off on that because we didn't know what was gonna go on with early access. So if where early access actually goes doesn't touch that area, then we would need to remediate that, not as part of the early access project, but with these funds.
Okay.
Because the area, it still needs to be remediated, it's just a question of which project does it fall into.
Right, and then can I hate to do this, but, because I know you're gonna do this for Board of Finance tomorrow, but when we say parking and access improvements, there's no parking with this project.
No, but those were the original categories back in 2023 that we presented to the Board of Finance, because we were contemplating some temporary parking
Right.
and that sort of thing. So I was trying to tie back to those
Yeah, I just feel like
categories.
when people see this, they're gonna say, oh, that's all taken care of, and it's pretty misleading, so.
Yeah, it was what we intended to do at the time. It's not what we were able to do. Let me make that clear when I present
That's a
that to the
great
Board of
clarifying
Finance.
point. Yeah, you're right. Other questions for Jennifer on this? Okay. To get a motion, please, for a resolution amending an appropriation and bond authorization of $91,771,367 for the purchase of 60 acres known as Great Island, to decrease the appropriation and bond authorization by $2,304,999 and recommend same to the Board of Finance. Sarah moves, Monica seconds, all in favor? Okay. Terrific, thank you. All right, next up. Update on the Great Island Early Access Project.
Well, I want to thank the RTM. They met last Monday and by Zoom, and the vote was 64 in favor and 2 opposed to the access project. So it's been pointed out that it's we can't call it early access anymore. So I suggest that we pivot to just simply access. So next step there is to work with the new Reed Hildebrand and team on a contract, and that's the next step. So, but I want to thank the RTM because as time goes on, it just adds to the schedule, right? So I really appreciate it, and I'm sure everybody appreciates them.
Yeah, they made a special effort to set up that Zoom meeting, which, having been on that Zoom meeting, was not an easy affair at all.
No.
And we appreciate the inconvenience everybody endured to do that, so thank you. Questions for Monica on Great Island? Okay. Next up is discussion and possible action on the formation of a Great Island Building Committee, Jennifer.
So the early access, the 400-ish thousand, doesn't rise to the level of a building committee. The prior version of the Board of Selectmen had set a $1 million threshold to consider a building committee. However, I do think that Great Island is unique. I think there is a lot of interest in all of the decisions being public and transparent. So I do think that we should have some version of a Great Island Building Committee beginning now with the Reed Hildebrand work. I don't think it necessarily has to be the full size of a Pear Tree Beach Building Committee or the HHR Building Committee. It is just the design work. But I think that having heard a lot of the discussions at the other boards, having heard from residents during public comment or inquiry about Great Island items, I do think it's very important to have public discussions throughout that process.
Comments, Michael?
And what do you feel would be an ideal size?
I mean, we don't normally, on town projects, schools are a little different, building committees are definitely involved in the design portion. On other town projects, we haven't had it for the design portion, so I think it could be very small. I mean, normally we have 5 to 7, I don't even know if we need 5, maybe 3. Just 3, if we had 3, they wouldn't ever be able to meet out and discuss things outside of
The public.
the public group, you know, because it would be a quorum if only 2 of them were discussing it. So that's something to keep in mind with the sizing. But I think that this is a very narrow scope at the moment, and it's literally a roadway and parking. But I do think that it's important to have that transparency throughout the process.
So maybe 5.
I would say 5 tops.
Okay.
I think it could work with 3. I think it could work with 5. I don't think we want to go beyond 5,
Yeah.
just because it's such a small
Right.
project at this point.
You
Right.
could though for the major construction.
Yes,
that
for the
could go to
construction
7.
portion, maybe it expands.
Start with 3, go to 7, something like that, or 5.
But what's the threshold, right? So right now, we're at 500,000. To
What's
get
about
to
it?
5, do we say 1 million? Do we, like, what's the tipping point?
There is none. The establishment of a building committee is binary. It's either yes if it's above $1 million or no if it's below $1 million, and there's no specified committee size.
No, I'm just saying, we're talking about the number of people, and we could go to a higher point, so maybe we should say what the
I
tipping
would
point
definitely
be.
go to 7 for the project itself. So once construction's underway, and there's a
Got it.
lot to do, as you well know.
Got
I
it.
think for this, I mean, thinking about 3, there's not a whole lot to engage on that the public is going to be, I think, super interested in, unless it's a design element that increases the scope of what's prescribed in the documents we use to hire the consultants. In other words, we're talking about, and even the presentation that I wrote on that was really discreetly focused on, we're doing parking, we're doing this northern causeway, lights, a couple other things. We're not doing meadows, we're not doing remediations, we're not doing anything else except that. So the extent of design discussion comes up where our consultants or somebody recommends, I know you limited it to this, but we think to do this right, you got to add these 2 things. That needs to be discussed publicly because it's contrary to the sandbox that we've asked them to play in, if you will. And so having a building committee to say, hey, we've been talking to these guys here, could we please have a discussion about that publicly, in which case the building committee could come here and say, this is what we're recommending, and we'd be able to look at that against the original scope and say yes or no as a board. But the great thing is, all of that's done in public.
Yeah, I'll just add though that also Ed has agreed to be the pre-construction manager on this. So that's somebody that we're going to be depending on to make sure everything is on time, we can get the materials, the numbers look right. So I think that is a terrific addition to this.
Yep.
And I think that it goes without saying that the Board of Selectmen on any big decisions would be part of the conversation for sure.
Yep. Marcy, comments?
I'm in support of making a building committee for this project. I think transparency is what we're being asked by residents. I think that people are incredibly interested, although I don't think the decisions are going to be robust through the design period. I think the interest is robust. And I think it's important that people are able to follow, to be able to stay engaged, and to be able to understand how we came about our decision-making process. Although I think 5 is a lot, I think considering that there are going to be elements that we're going to have to vote on, going down to 3, you're never going to have a quorum. It's going to be difficult to have conversations outside of that voting room. So, although yes, I do think 5 is pretty large for the decisions that we're going to be making, I think it's really the safe, sweet spot to make sure that we're being as robust as we can be about this communication and this project.
Other comments, reactions? I think if we go, the issue is that when we formed the building committee before, we had Jeff Table, who's here tonight, Dan Kolakowski, and Monica serving on that committee. We disbanded it when the project got suspended. So I think we will go back to this. We've got 3 obvious folks that we can put on that committee. Should we decide that that's the right answer? If we go to 5, we're going to have to find 2 people to put on that building committee. And we just need to embark on a process to solicit applications, get them through the committees, and get folks to interview to this board.
Well, I think everybody should understand that we will be looking for the bigger group probably September, October. Because I spoke with Ed, and I think you want the building committee to be part of the bid process and the choosing the contractor. So,
For sure.
I guess.
So we can form it well in advance of that.
Yeah, I think we should start looking for people for that bigger group, whether it's 5 or 7 or whatever the number is, at the end of the summer.
Okay. Mike or Sarah, and Bill, committee size and composition,
I
members?
think 5 sounds great. I think sometimes it's hard, you have people that are absolutely regulars and for whatever reason they can't make a meeting, and if you only have 3, if you don't have quorum, you have 2 people, you can't have a meeting. And if you have decisions to be made, it's difficult sometimes, so.
Okay. All right, sounds like we need a building committee of 5. And we should, since it'll be a larger committee, should we just take applications to that committee? How do you want to do it? Do you want someone from this board serving on that? Monica, do you want to be on there? Do you guys have a point of view?
Well, I don't think it would hurt necessarily to have another Board of Selectmen member on the,
As one of the 5.
as one of the 5, maybe
Okay.
someone from the, maybe someone from Board of Finance. That might,
Okay.
I'm not campaigning to be on, I was on the
Okay.
advisory committee, so.
However, he's putting his
there are
name
other, there are other building committees that are now closing down, so looking
Okay,
at
so-
Marcy and
Well,
Sarah.
I would just say to that I think somebody from the board of, if we're gonna go to 5, I think that somebody from the Board of Finance, absolutely. And I think that, the RTM has a lot of interest in this, and maybe somebody from Park and Rec from the RTM or from Public Works for this phase. And then,
I think that's okay, but then we start to fill up the 5 slots pretty quickly at that point, and we have no professional expertise as part of the committee at that point. I think that's probably not a good idea, to have no one with any professional expertise on the committee.
well,
Well, but if I have 2 members of the Board of Selectmen, 1 member of the Board of Finance, 1 member from RTM,
yeah.
so.
Do we need to, Mike, from the Board of Selectmen? I mean, if we're going to be reporting every meeting on this,
No, I mean, it was just a thought, but I don't think that within that same confine at this point, I mean, I don't think we need someone from Parks and Rec. I think we could go with one from here, the 2 others and the Board of Finance person.
Yeah, I mean, we could have an RTM person, I just don't
And an
think they need to
RTM.
be Parks and Rec, because Great Island's not a park either, so
Right.
there's that issue.
Yeah.
Okay. Tell you what, why don't we vote to establish a building committee with 5 members, and we will take applications to that and then vote as a board later on. I don't think we need to specify who needs to be on the board in terms of
Okay.
where they come from.
Sure.
That gives us the flexibility to pick. We may decide that we want 2 members of the Board of Selectmen on there, but we can pick that, say, at our next meeting. But we'll put out a call for applications to the committees and go from there. Does that make sense?
Sure.
yeah, I'd love to talk with Jeff and Dan, though, about skills that we really could use at this stage.
Okay.
So if I could.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, but just establishing a committee like this doesn't tie our hands in terms of
Right.
that particular issue. We can kind of decide what expertise is needed for this particular phase. Okay. Could I so I would form the committee just for this contract with Reed Hildebrandt. We will reconstitute the committee once once we get to the phase of the picking the construction firm. Could I get a motion to create a 5-member building committee for the access project now being, about to be overseen by Reed Hildebrand? Monica moves, Sarah seconds, all in favor? Okay.
I'm sorry, who moved and seconded on that?
Monica and Sarah. Gentlemen, thank you.
Thank you very much. Good night.
Okay. Transfers. Discuss and take action on a request to transfer $6,000 from Board of Finance Capital Reserve to the Great Island Topographical Survey. Jennifer.
A couple of months ago, you approved $27,000 for a topographical survey of Great Island. At that time, Redness and Mead had sharpened their pencil. They thought they might be able to use the tree inventory that was done as part of the master planning. But when they imported the GPS data from that survey done by Trefoil, the accuracy varied widely and more precise locations are required. So they are requesting, or we're requesting, in order to engage their services for an expansion of the topographic survey to include field location by surveyors for the trees. As I said, Redness and Mead had included this in their original proposal, but then did pull it out, thinking they may be able to use the Trefoil data, but they've decided that they can't. The reason we need the more accurate locations, for one, it's a requirement for zoning and wetlands application to indicate trees in and near areas of proposed effect, and to indicate which are going to be preserved and which are going to be removed. And Reed Hildebrand will need accurate locations when they're designing the final positions of roadways, walkways, parking. So they need to know where trees are so that they can successfully avoid them if possible. And the early access RFP did not include the tree survey work because we pulled out the topographic survey as a separate item.
Yeah, we also pulled out all the contingency and all of that. And the reason is that to the extent we needed to spend any additional money, it gives us a chance to shine a spotlight on it and make sure that's what we want to do. So, questions on this? Sarah?
I don't have a question. I think it's really unfortunate that the accuracy was unknown.
Well, I think it's important to understand that the Trefoil study includes a disclosure that it is within a certain.
No, I understand.
And the Trefoil, I think it's more for us to do tree care, like where to go to prune and that kind of thing. So
Monica, totally appreciate it. I just, we've had quite a bit that's come before the board the past couple months. And it's really unfortunate that this was not, at least someone didn't take a look at it. I'm not saying from our end, I'm saying from the other side, that someone didn't just take a gut check to see if this makes sense, if we could rely on that data. So I support it. It needs to get done. We absolutely have to have it in order for us to go forward.
Yeah, I'm going to put a happy face on that just a little bit. You're exactly right. I would say that that's the bad news. The good news is that we've got a process now to where when these things come up, there's a discussion. Does this make sense? We may have missed it before, but now we can discuss it again, and it's being done in a transparent way. And so I would applaud that.
It has nothing
However,
to do, I just want to make sure.
I wish that we had known this before.
This is what I'm saying.
So I'm saying.
That's my comment.
It's not an
Yes.
or, it's an and.
Yes,
So,
and I'm not saying that there hasn't been, no comment of mine included anything about transparency. It was just really a
Right.
bummer that this was not included, that's all.
Agreed, Matt.
Yeah, we have to do this, but I want to send a message, like, lots of times there are transfers and things that come up, and it's like, oh, that makes sense, oh, yeah, those are changed circumstances, fine, no problem. This isn't that. This is somebody previously not thinking it all the way through, and now they're coming back and asking for $6,000 of taxpayer money.
Yep.
So be aware that these types of transfers related to Great Island that come up because someone missed something earlier aren't looked upon happily or favorably. I will do it with a smiling face because my respect for John, but
I love it.
be warned.
I am in complete agreement with that point. You're right
Okay.
about that. And so let's take that as a shot across the bow, but also just a reminder to keep yourself sharp on this, but thank you. Okay. Could I please get a motion to approve a request to transfer $6,000 from the Board of Finance Capital Reserve to the Great Island Topographical Survey and recommend same to the Board of Finance? Mike moves. Monica seconds. All in favor? Okay. All right. Next up is approval of minutes for the February 23rd, 2026 regular meeting. I've looked at those and that's fine. Anyone have any edits? Could I get a motion to approve the minutes from the February 23rd, 2026 regular meeting? Mike moves. Marcy seconds. All in favor? Okay. Approach for bike and scooter safety, that will start to come up again as we move into the spring months. Does anyone else have anything to add for agenda review? Okay. Upcoming meetings. Monday, March 23rd is a regular meeting of the Board of Selectmen. That one will be by Zoom. And then our Monday meeting after that on April 6th will be in person in 206. I think that's it for our agenda. Could I get a motion to adjourn? Mike moves. Sarah seconds. All in favor? Stand adjourned. Marcy, thanks for joining by Zoom. Hope things are going well.